The folder was supposed to be noise, and Priya Anand had been listening to the first recording in it for 90 seconds before she understood that whoever had labeled it noise had never once put on headphones. She closed her eyes. Under the hiss, under the 17-year-old buoy hum, and the thermal crackle of a dead zone edge, something was keeping time. Slow, regular, patient in a way that nothing broken is ever patient. She had read the brief twice on the cutter coming out. It was a tidy brief. Infrastructure Anomaly 774 Omega, a cost review file that an oversight officer had inflated, in the authority's careful phrasing, beyond its supportable scope, and that the authority now wished to see resolved in dimension. Priya had been doing contract analysis for the Reach for 19 years, and she could translate authority phrasing the way she could translate a Sewell catalog fragment. Resolved in dimension meant, tell us it is 5 unrelated frontier hiccups, sign the finding, and let us close the postings and shelve the embarrassing folder before it costs anyone a career. They had hired her because she was the best pattern reader on the roster and because a contractor's finding was deniable in a way a staff finding was not. If the analysis went somewhere uncomfortable, she was a line item, not an officer. She had understood that going in, she had needed the contract. She took the headphones off and sat with the quiet of the borrowed case room. A stripped-out admin office on a Reach sector hub, 3 folding desks, a wall where someone had pinned the source tags in a neat grid, a relay arc contractor's drift logs, a gas giant acoustic trace, a salvage handshake failure survey, a station life support record, 2 pages of transit imbalance intelligence around a region the charts left blank, 5 sources, 5 postings the authority wanted to close. She had just heard the first one keeping time. She did not yet let herself wonder about the other 4. That was the discipline. You did not go looking for a pattern. You let the patterns find you, one at a time, and you wrote down only what was actually there. She played the second source. The second source was the gas giant trace, and Priya recognized it before the header finished loading, because she had touched it once before. It was a recording out of a cloud-top contact station, an uncatalogued IU response, the kind that came along maybe twice in a career. 18 months ago, a backwater oversight desk had flagged it up the analysis queue with a note asking whether it was anything, and it had landed on Priya's contract docket for 4 hours one afternoon between 2 larger jobs. She had run it against the Sewell catalog, found the 2 motif tags the catalog could flag, the one the brokers glossed as the ones who shaped, the one they glossed as kept silence, and written in the margin, hurried, carrier structure under the motifs, structured like a timekeeper, recommend deeper pass. Then the contract had ended and nobody had paid for the deeper pass, and she had forgotten it the way you forget a door you walk past. Here it was again. Her own margin note had become a line item in an authority anomaly file, cited as a gas giant analyst reading, her name sanded off it the way contractor names always were. She had 4 hours then. She had a contract now. She put the headphones back on and did the pass she had wanted to do 18 months ago. The Sewell catalog read the EU the way the Sewell read everything, as a transaction. Every shape in the catalog asked the deep ones for something. Greet, query, request, open. The catalog could recognize 2 answering motifs and threw away the rest as noise, because there was no trade in the rest and the Sewell did not build instruments to hear things they could not sell. Priya had spent a career in the rest. She stripped the 2 motifs out of the recording, subtracted them, the way you mute the melody to hear the bass, and listened to what the catalog had been discarding. Under the 2 motifs, holding them up, there was a carrier, slow, regular. A pulse the answer was built on top of, the way a voice is built on top of a heartbeat. She had heard a pulse exactly that slow and that regular 90 minutes ago, in a buoy recording from a dead zone edge, 1,000 light years from any gas giant.
You're still here.
Renata Solheim said from the door.
It's the back of third shift.
Priya pulled the headphones down to her neck. The oversight officer stood in the hatchway in a slate blue uniform that had no business being that clean this far out, reading glasses on a cord, a document slate in one hand the way other people held a cup of tea.
I lost the shift. Sorry. I do that.
I am told it is your most reliable trait.
Renata came in, set the slate down on the next desk, and did not sit.
You were brought on to dimension this file. Tell me where you are with dimensioning it.
Priya looked at the source wall. This was the moment, and she knew it was the moment, and she chose the slower road through it.
Tell me what answer you were hoping I'd reach.
Renata's flat assessing calm did not change, which Priya had already learned was the tell.
I do not hope for answers, specialist. I record them. But I will tell you what the file needs to survive. It needs to be either nothing, defensibly, or it needs to be something so undeniable that the people who want it to be nothing cannot afford to say so.
And if it's the second one, the officer whose name is on it.
Is already the officer whose name is on it.
Renata said.
That ship sailed at a posting called Reach Relay Arc 9. Show me what you have.
So Priya showed her. She put the buoy recording up on the room display, the relay contractor's deep timing trace, the one the contractor of record had apparently been filing reports about for 4 years while nobody read them, a slow pulse, drawn as a line of beats. Then she put the EU carrier under it, stripped of its 2 motifs, drawn the same way. Then she did the only thing she had done that an honest analyst could be fired for. She laid them in the same window at the same scale and let the room look. They did not match. That was the first thing she made herself say, because it was true and because a lesser analyst would have lied by omission.
They are not the same signal. Different sources, different physics, 1,000 light years apart. No shared clock anyone has ever charted between a comms buoy and a gas giant ancient. If I tell you these are the same thing, I am a contractor who heard a face in static, and you should fire me, and the file dies as overreach.
But
they rhyme.
She let that sit. Renata picked her reading glasses up off the cord and put them on, which Priya would also come to learn was a tell. The officer wanting to see the thing more precisely than she wanted to.
explain rhyme, for the record, precisely.
Priya had been explaining it to herself for 2 shifts. The words came out clean.
2 lines of poetry don't share a word. They share a shape, a meter, a length, a way of landing. You can hear that 2 lines rhyme without either one meaning the other. These 5 sources don't share a signal. They share a shape. All of them are slow. All of them are regular in a way nothing decaying is regular. All of them are built around a thing that keeps time. And every one of them is described by the people who found it with the same word, in 5 languages, none of whom were talking to each other.
What word?
Kept.
She pulled them up one at a time. The relay contractor called the dead zone a place the network was built to keep its distance from, and to keep its time by. The gas giant motif the Sewell catalog flagged was glossed, kept silence. The salvage survey out of the blank region cluster used the word the independence used for a derelict that holds what you put into it and gives nothing back. The transit intelligence was 2 pages of mass going toward a blank on the chart and never coming out. A region that kept what entered it. And the station record, the inhabited one, the one that frightened her most, was a maintenance elder's note about a life support core that had changed its rhythm and would not change back. The spine is keeping a new time, and we do not know who said it.
5 strangers. 1 word. Either that is the largest coincidence in the file, or every one of them walked up to the edge of the same thing from a different direction, and came back saying it kept time and would not let them past. I can't tell you which. I can tell you the coincidence would be bigger than the thing it's trying to explain away.
Renata took the glasses off.
You understand that they rhyme is not a finding. The authority does not fund a fleet on a rhyme. And the moment you write, these are one phenomenon, you have written a sentence you cannot support. And the people who want this gone will spend the next decade in the gap between what you heard and what you proved, and they will win because the gap is real.
I know. I've watched it happen. I've been the gap they used.
Then what do you propose to put in a file that is neither a lie nor a sentence you cannot defend?
And there it was, the actual problem, named by the officer, cleaner than Priya had managed to name it for herself. She was forbidden, rightly, from asserting a cause. She was forbidden by conscience from asserting a coincidence. Between the two forbidden sentences was a silence, and she had spent her whole career learning that you do not break a silence like that by talking louder. You break it the way the frontier contractor at the gas giant station had broken it 18 months and 1,000 light years ago, when the catalog of questions got nothing and he stopped asking questions and played the deep one its own pattern back. I heard you instead of, what are you? She did not need to assert the pattern. She needed to build a thing that let the pattern assert itself and claim nothing and be impossible to unhear.
Give me a day. I'm not going to write you a sentence. I'm going to build you something to listen to.
She did not sleep. She had done this before, on smaller things, and the work had a shape she trusted. She took the 5 sources and she did not average them, because averaging would have been a lie that smoothed the differences into a single fake signal. Instead, she built a composite the way a conductor builds a chord. Each source kept whole, kept itself, playing in its own voice but aligned in time so a listener could hear them sound together. She set the relay buoy's slow pulse as the floor. She laid the EU carrier over it, stripped of its motifs. She brought in the station core's changed rhythm, and the salvage survey's intervals, and even the transit data, which had no sound at all, until she rendered the gaps between ships into a beat, mass falling toward the blank, regular as a drum. When she had them aligned, she played all 5 at once. And the room, when she finally let Renata back into it, did the thing Priya had built it to do. It did not tell you they were the same. It let you hear 5 strangers, light years apart, none of them in contact, keeping time to something none of them could see. And it left you, the listener, holding the only sentence that fit, and made you the one who thought it, so that the thought could never be taken back. There was one more thing, and Priya almost did not show it, because it was the part that crossed from frightening into something with no name. She had time-stamped the changes. The relay contractor's pulse was slowing. That was in her reports, dated 4 years of it. The station core had changed and held. The IU carrier in the 18-month-old recording, laid against an older Sul archive, trace of the same gas giant, had drifted the same direction. She lined the change dates up across all 5 sources, and they were not random. They clustered. They had all begun to move, each in its own corner of the dark, across the same handful of recent years. The same handful of years in which humans had started, clumsily, with hot-wired probes and overdriven buoys and forged heartbeats, to play these things their own patterns back.
I want to be very careful with this part.
She said, and she heard her own voice drop, the qualifiers falling away the way they did when she was certain.
I am not saying we caused it. I have no mechanism. I have no proof. A correlation in time is not a cause, and I will fight anyone who writes it down as one. But I am the first person to look at all 5 at once, and I am telling you what is actually on the page. It is changing. All of it. At once. And it started changing in the same years we started answering it.
Renata stood in front of the composite for a long time. She did not pick up her slate. That was the first thing all night she had left off the record, and Priya noticed, because noticing was the job. When the officer finally spoke, the calm held and the words went quiet, which Priya now knew meant she was moved.
Did we wake it up?
It was the question an institution was never supposed to ask out loud, and she had asked it to a contractor in an empty room at the back of a shift, which was the only place it could be asked. Priya gave her the honest answer, because the honest answer was the only thing in the file she was sure would still be true in 100 years.
I can show you that it's waking. I can't show you that we did it.
She looked at the composite, at the 5 strangers keeping one time.
I'm not sure which answer is worse.
She wrote the finding the way she had built the composite. It asserted nothing it could not defend, and it made the rhyme impossible to unhear. The 5 sources do not share a signal, she wrote. They share a structure, slow, regular, timekeeping, and described independently by every observer as kept. All 5 are changing, and the changes cluster in the same recent span. The correlation is not proof of a common cause. The absence of proof is not evidence of coincidence. Recommend the inquiry remain open and the postings remain crude. She attached the composite. She signed it as a contractor, knowing the signature was deniable, knowing she had just made herself the analyst who had aggregated the thing the authority would most have preferred to leave scattered. Renata read it twice. Then she did something Priya had not expected. She took out her own slate and under the contractor's deniable signature, added the officer's name, the one that was not deniable.
A rhyme isn't a finding,
She said,
but it is a thing a person can refuse to unhear. And now there are 2 of us. That's harder to file away than 1 contractor and a folder of coincidence.
She sent it up the chain, to the desks that decided what an inquiry was allowed to find and to whom. Priya watched the transmission confirm and understood that she had just handed the largest open question in the galaxy to people who could move fleets, in a form they could not pretend they hadn't heard, and that she would spend the rest of her career being the person who did that. The composite was still playing on the wall, 5 strangers keeping 1 slow time. Priya took off the headphones and listened to it out loud, in the air for the first time, and found she could hear the rhyme without them now. That was the thing about a pattern. Once you had heard it, you could not stop.
Whatever's keeping that time,
She said to the room, to the officer, to nobody.
it's been keeping it since before there was anyone to hear it. And it's slowing down now. For the first time. With us standing here learning to knock.
She did not say whether the knocking and the slowing were the same sentence. She had built a whole composite precisely so she would never have to. But she stood in the dark with the oversight officer in the 5-voice chord, and for the length of one held breath, neither of them said it, and both of them heard it. Then Renata picked her slate back up and put her glasses back on, and became the officer again, the way she carried hard things, and asked Priya who else on the whole frontier had a name on more than one of these 5 reports. Because a pattern was a thing you proved by finding the next instance, and somewhere out there was a 6th source and a 7th, and a person standing at the edge of the kept silence who had heard it longer and closer than anyone in this room. Priya already knew one of the names. It was on 2 of the 5.
Haddad,
She said,
the relay contractor. She's been writing it down for 4 years and keeping the recordings nobody asked for. And she is closer to the center of that blank on the chart than any human alive.
She looked at the composite one more time.
If anyone's going to hear it stop, it'll be her.